Pokemon has been going through a lot of controversy. Same goes with that one website-based Pokemon game recently, Pokerogue, and the controversy about the trans people in that game. A year or two ago, I made a video called like why Pokemon games suck. The reality of the situation was I grew up with Pokemon. I didn't really have many other video games I could play, so that was my only view. And then I got a computer. I was able to play Halo and Doom Eternal and League of Legends and Power World. Now, Power World and Nintendo have had their beef, so it's kind of concerning what the future is of those companies, especially with a lot of people becoming growingly dissatisfied with Nintendo's decisions over the past decade. The future of Pokemon looks really uncertain, and people's dissatisfaction with the remakes is a huge reason why. But as somebody who was super critical of the company, I have recently drastically changed my opinion, and I think that even though what it feels like we're experiencing the downfall of Pokemon and the Pokemon company as a whole as it gets more disgusting and uses worse and worse marketing and money-grubbing tactics and just preying on its consumer base and nostalgia factors, I really don't think it'll ever go away. And there's one very specific, well, I guess it's a couple, but it's one very specific reason why. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, I like Halo, I like Doom Eternal, I like League of Legends. However, these games take a lot of energy to perform at. They're not very relaxing. And that is where Pokemon is the opposite. It's not a challenging game. When I come home from work and I'm so exhausted that I can't enjoy Halo or Doom, I can just push the buttons and kind of mash my way through battles. And the experience is tailored to be very good for that, especially if you're a very busy person. Put a berry in the soil, you go to bed because you only had a little bit to play before work the next day. So you put the berry in the ground and then you wake up the next day and you collect your berries. You only have to play the game for like 10, maybe 15 minutes, get some stuff that you need to do. This is where like the daily events, like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the swarms and stuff is super nice for adults. And this was a game that was designed for kids who you would expect to be playing it for like hours and hours and hours, like we do with Halo, like we do with League of Legends and COD, I guess. Looking at the game through the lens of an adult gamer, and what do I actually appreciate in this game? There's a lot more stuff that I pick up on that kind of surprises me. One of them was the exhaustion factor. I'm too tired to play the other games I love, but I'm not so tired that I will just put on a YouTube video and just lay down. I'm just too restless for that. I needed a little bit more stimulation. So having to go at the battles and plan for fights, make team decisions, inventory decisions, tactical decisions, that makes it a little bit more interesting. So I have been able to enjoy Pokemon. One of my favorite parts about the Sun and Moon games was the battle tree. It was just an endless flow of fights that were engaging and really short. And if you're following the main storyline of the Pokemon games, then it can be a little bit difficult to stop and save in the middle of a story event because it feels kind of bad. And I think one of the worst parts is it can kind of feel like a time waster going from location A to location B, just pressing the arrow keys and running away from wild Pokemon fights because the Pokemon wouldn't pose a challenge for you, and then it would just be inconvenience if like you got crit after like missing an attacks and then suddenly one of your party members is dead and that's just an inconvenience. So it has a lot of annoyance and stress factors in the game that can make playing it unenjoyable. But if you're tired and I realize this is a challenge that the game is putting in my way intentionally, and I need to be wary of this, as opposed to, oh, I just need to go from this town to the other town. No, the trainers and the wild Pokemon on the way, they're not meant to be superimposing like a boss battle, but they are like just throwing the little packs of grunts at you every now and then, like in a Halo level as you're going from location A to location B. And these can be enjoyed. I didn't enjoy them before because I just saw them as a detraction from the journey. But as I've been learning about game design, and after interacting more with the League of Legends community, I noticed that these Pokemon are all put here. They're not supposed to be difficult challenges because the game does not want to challenge you in the same way that most other games do. Just enough to give you a slightly rousing experience and not put you in any sort of stress or demand anything of you other than a couple button presses, because it is meant to be a more relaxing game, like you just kind of follow along with. And I can appreciate this because, like, oh, I could just play a little bit of Pokemon before bed, I got my gamer quota fulfilled for the day, yippee, it feels really good, and I'm happy with that. So I've never before in my life, because only just now, I was trying to fall back in love with the Pokemon games, because recently I was looking at how much money would I get for selling off all my Pokemon games and whatnot, and it's like, oh, I can only get roughly $150 to $200 worth for all of my Pokemon and Nintendo stuff, and I was like, that's it? I thought Pokemon games were a lot more than that right now, but I guess the Pokemon market has kind of exploded, thus the downfall of Pokemon, and that spurred me on to making this video. So I was like, you know what, I'll play through them again. If I still don't have fun, just confirming I do not enjoy these games, because I already said that I don't, but, you know, just to see if I'm missing something here, and I was missing that major factor. Another thing that reminded me of this was, if you're familiar with League of Legends at all, there's a character called Yumi, and if you're not familiar with League of Legends at all, this character was so good at doing nothing that they had to nerf her, so she did nothing worse. And what I mean by this is, in League of Legends, the optimal way to climb into the higher echelon of players is to do less fighting and just focus on clearing minion waves. So the minion waves crash into the enemy's turret and then kill a turret. And by the way, it's also a tower defense game in addition to a fighting game. But a lot of people in the lower ranks, they just love fighting and will abandon waves and let towers crumble, the thing that you need in order to win the game. They will just let their towers go and lose the game in order to fight, even if they're at a statistical disadvantage, whether it's number advantage or stat disadvantages. They will just go in and fight because that is a fun thing to do. And this character, Yumi, is so good at breaking up fights or preventing somebody from fighting by giving them a shield so they don't take damage, so that way a player cannot be killed, or giving them a speed boost so they can get out of a fight faster, or hitting the enemy with a projectile so they're slower, therefore they can't get on a character and kill them, and also healing so a character doesn't die. So she just nullifies fights, and that is what she excelled at, and she excelled at it so well that, yeah, she had to get nerfed and brought weaker, so she couldn't do those things. So now she actually does nothing, not even just a joke anymore, she just does basically nothing. But the issue with this was, people in the lower ranks did not enjoy this because we are here to fight. If we didn't fight, we would be higher ranked. We're not higher ranked. So I would rather fight because it's more fun that way if I play the game like this where I'm constantly fighting and not worrying about turrets. Which I would just say, like, go play like a fighting game or some other game, not League of Legends. But nonetheless, I shouldn't be telling anybody how they should or shouldn't be enjoying a video game, which is which comes to this point where I left a comment saying how I really liked this character because it was very relaxing. I could just kind of watch the game go by, all the cool animations and whatnot, and people fighting and looking like, oh, he's doing that, and because he knows he can do that, they do this instead, and there's little mind games that are going that are really cool to watch, and I really enjoy it. But playing as this cat that basically does nothing, I just kind of sit there and like wait for my opportunity to push all my buttons, and while I'm not pushing my buttons, I'm just watching the game, and I just found it to be a really interesting and enjoyable experience. And then as I was playing Pokemon just this past week, I realized, holy shit, this is the same thing. I get what I enjoyed from this specific character in this game. Another YouTuber made a video talking about the support class being perceived as low skill across the all gaming community, and I was looking at why that is the case. And I shared in the comments how I do not care about the skill aspect here. If I want to play something where skill matters more, I would. But it's also tiring to play something that requires more skill because it requires more effort and thought into every single thing that you're doing. Sometimes I just want to sit back, push my buttons when I need to, and just enjoy the experience, whether I win or lose. And that same thing happens in Pokemon. Sometimes you miss an ability and get crit in return, and then you lose and you go, oh well, I guess I will do that fight all over again. Same thing still applies to League of Legends. I would not think that I would have this type of comparison drawn between the two. And the person who made the video replied, and they thought it was very interesting, and shortly after they actually changed the title of the video into something that I thought was more proper. And I don't know if my comment directly like affected that decision or not, but nonetheless, I thought it was cool that I shared this opinion, and then I saw the video change in a way to better reflect my expression of like, this is something that I really enjoyed about the game, was to sit back and almost like cinema that I play a mild part in. And this comes to the story aspect of Pokemon. It does have an engaging story. It has so much lore. There's so much to know about the game, and if you're passively enjoying it, then that is good for you. It's a more stimulating experience than sitting down and watching a series on Netflix. So it is more interactive. This is a good thing. Video games are good, even when they're story-based. But as for League of Legends, I had somebody else reply to my comment. It was a lot of words. I didn't read it all because because they were just generally being uninformed and disrespectful. So I just like stopped right there and then, and I deleted my comment because I did not want my appreciation for this aspect of League of Legends to be used as a launch pad for somebody to be terrible. So I deleted my comment so it would delete their reply to my comment along with it. That was what I could do for this situation. Somebody's being ignorant on purpose and being shitty. As a result of it, I can do one small thing to prevent this from meeting anybody else's eyes, and so I did that. But they're saying along the lines of like, this is so bad for everybody. Like, you doing this is a burden on everybody else in the game. And I was thinking, I had a very similar thought pattern about the old Pokemon games, where the game doesn't have you do a whole lot, which just decreases the amount of gameplay moments. It decreases the amount of stuff you can do, the interactability that you have, the total amount of enjoyment you can derive from the game has gone down to, I push this button repeatedly and I waste my time and don't get anything out of it. And I realize, okay, so that is why people didn't like Yumi. Because they felt like this thing just pushes its couple buttons as it needs to and then just wastes time. So I realized, okay, so my appreciation of the specific character who's notoriously loathed by the League of Legends community that I was finding enjoyment of, it was just that the enjoyment that I used to get out of Pokemon games was replaced by this new character. And I could enjoy a video game in the same way that I enjoyed Pokemon, but through the lens of League of Legends, which made me enjoy the game of League of Legends, which I know, if you know, that is ouch. But I just thought that was a very interesting takeaway, that the point of Pokemon is not supposed to be some prestigious end-all be-all game. They're a massive company. Nintendo, the Pokemon company, they make games for people's enjoyment, and I know that if I want a more challenging Pokemon experience, I can boot up my Mystery Dungeons games, because I always struggle with those, even though I've played it like a dozen times, and it's always, the storyline is really good. So that is how I used to love Pokemon, because it's what I grew up with and had an obsession with. And then once I found games that were just more stimulating to play, and I had my fill of that, and then now I'm like, oh, I'm too tired from work that I don't have the energy to enjoy the games like Halo and Doom Eternal, so I will just sit back and play Pokemon. And so I really love that I have refound my appreciation for Pokemon. I was curious if you felt the same way, or if there's any game that you've had where you've had an experience like this. I would appreciate, let me know. Is there any games I should check out that are also really relaxing experiences? Thank you for watching, and I will see you later. Peace.